All right, we are finally getting to Freddy versus Jason. Now,
Finally.
yeah, I'm an asshole. Uh, so you said you did see this prior before where you went through the whole series of Elm Street and Friday the 13th, correct?
If I have, it was probably just one time, like a long time ago.
Mm.
Or I really didn't remember, like, hardly any of it. So,
Yeah. All right, so this came out in 2003, but as we all know by this point, especially after you having watched it, Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, that was released by New Line back in '93. So it took 10 years for them to set this up because, of course, at the end of that one, you have Freddy's glove come out from the ground and then grab Jason's mask and pull it in. So they have been trying to get this off the ground for a long time, but then 10 years later, they have finally gotten it done. And uh, for me, this was, I think, the first of really either franchise I'd watched all the way through because I was only like about 11 at the time. And so I wasn't really like that in tune with this series. So I remember going to the theater like with family and stuff like that. And for me, this was actually, from what I remember, a very interesting theater experience because this was a bunch of like, the 20 something dude bro types. Because I remember going into the theater, we were going to see it, and then just guys in the audience be like, yeah, Jason, let's go. And I do remember like I remember this vividly, like one particular guy, I think it was like a black guy and his girlfriend. He's like, boo, Jason sucks. So he was clearly a Freddy fan. And I just remember just watching the movie as it's going along, especially towards that beginning part, like when a girl opens up her top and just guys clapping and shit. Like it was just really like that audience just having a good time as a popcorn flick, just being like, yeah, yeah, let's do this type of thing. And I don't recall ever having a theater experience like that. So that's what makes this pretty interesting because especially nowadays you don't really get that anymore, as far as like that. So
well, I mean, in like a little
yeah.
sidetrack, a little off topic, but in very, very recent times, Top Gun Maverick was
Hmm.
pretty good. There was a little bit of reaction, blah
Yeah,
blah.
but I mean,
But
just like that sheer, like
yeah,
like horror crowd, like I said,
horror,
like the
yeah,
college type dude, everyone just having a good time, just clapping, just going
yeah.
along with it. I just distinctly remember that at the
The
time. There
only
was
other
like so
time I
much fun.
remember that happening was seeing one of the Jackass movies.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I remember like
but
going to theaters
anyway,
and seeing those, but yeah. So again, just fun times, just like a little story there. But so yeah, so this was like the first time I really seen it as a whole, and when before I really became like a true horror fan. Because even at the time, there were some characters that would probably scare me a little bit, but going into this one, it's almost like an action movie. I wouldn't say it's particularly scary. It's just a fun ride of a film.
mm-hmm.
But what's interesting going into this one is that this one predates a lot of the versus films because even the following year you had AVP, and then eventually down the line you had like Batman v Superman and other things like that. And if you consider obviously both franchises, the genre, like you don't really see a lot of films like this. It's a pretty big deal when you look at it. And there's still some people who may consider it not to be that great, maybe as far as the script and the story. But if you really look at it, it's really the most simplest yet the most sensible way to kind of go about this plot. Freddy, as we've seen the franchise plays off of fear. That's what gives him his power. So he uses an entity like Jason to, harness that power back, for to kill for him and to bring him back. So, there's been a lot of scripts, even ones, where at the end it could have been like a whole like big like the devil's hand coming and grabbing him down, pulling him down the hill, and a pinhead cameo, and of course even things like Ash versus Freddy versus Jason. That was always a talk. It was even a comic book at least, but that would have been a great concept. But as far as the general, idea, it's the most sensible. It's like, yeah, there could have been probably some things a little bit better, but if you really break it down, look at it, you can appreciate just having gotten this film, and it's directed by Ronnie Yu, who actually did direct Bride of Chucky. So if you look at that film, you can actually see it's not See the Chucky, it's Bride of Chucky, which is a better film.
Yeah, yeah,
But you
I
can look at
know.
it by seeing like the color palette, like you have like those blue hues and just this camera work and how And there were some various shots in this film that you can look at, especially like at the tail end of the movie, where you can like freeze frame and just been like you could have that as like a really nice poster on the wall. Some really good shots and stuff like that. So, but of course, there's some controversy with this because knowing that Kane Hodder had been the guy who had played Jason the last 4 times in the franchise leading into this, and then a lot of people like, well, why didn't you bring him back? But they got Ken Kersinger, who's much taller, and he was a stunt guy on like Jason Takes Manhattan, and
For one teeny little friggin' stunt that he did like a million times
well,
prior.
technically there was two, like the one part in the diner when he slaps his hand away and throws him against the wall, which is pretty funny. But
It was because of the car. It was because of the car scene.
yeah, supposedly, yeah, that was supposed to be him and everything. And so, yeah, so there was some controversy going into that. And of course, for me at the time, I didn't really know anything about, who was playing Jason or think much of it. And for what he wanted to do, I think, as well as the studio and stuff, he wanted to give him more of like a Frankenstein type of vibe, just like a big, tall monster who has this, who has some sense of sympathy in a sense when you go along with him, like the eye, like how he seems kind of in a weird way a little innocent, especially the way they play him in this movie. And I still like the performance fine enough, especially towards the end. I mean, he's limber enough. He's they're swinging hard at one another and stuff. But over time, of course, you go back, you watch all those films, and you realize that, of course, Kane being the more recent guy, and obviously still in good shape, he could still do it at that time. You do look at it and realize it's just that extra layer that he brings to his Jason, for better or worse, some people think he may be overrated, but he still adds like that little extra personality. And when it comes to going head to head with Jason, you look at it and you're just like, you do kind of miss what would have been like that nice little
menacing edge.
Yeah, because as I said, his Jason always comes across like just not giving a fuck. He's like, yeah, he's scary in his own right, not like part 4 Jason, but just like a badass, like, get my way, I'm gonna fuck you up. I would have loved to have like felt that intimidation factor from Kane Hodder and just like going against Robert England. Like that really would have been a fun little element.
Because what it made me think with the dude in Versus, they had to tone it down to kind of be on level. Because Kane Hodder had that extra bit of oomph.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so like I said, so for what it is, it's still fine. But yeah, you look at it and you do kind of miss that. And so it does start off with a really, what I still think holds up very well, is a nice like little opening and Freddy's narration, giving the backstory, and then you go into clips of all the older films, and and the way it sets itself up, the intro I would say is perfectly solid. It really does work well. I like how they handled that, and so yeah, just kind of going from there. Like next thing you know, Jason's at Elm Street. He's going off and killing and everything. So just in general, like how you feel about like a lot of the kills and the way a lot of the stuff is handled, like the action and stuff.
Well, I was satisfied with that dickhead getting killed straight off because he was a straight
he
up
was
dickhead.
the real asshole.
I didn't
boyfriend
care
type.
about anybody. I was sitting there looking at the lineup. I'm like, dead.
Yeah.
It just.
I mean, that's a given with like half of the franchise, really.
I know.
It's you're not gonna.
This one in particular, and especially with the way he presented it, I'm like, yo, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have that one asshole kid. Like you look at Trey from Friday the 13th remake. People say he's like a really shitty character. I'm like, well, yeah, he's a shitty character, but in a good way because that's his character. Yeah, like people, I feel like the way people critique him, it's like as if he's actually like a badly done character. Like, well, he's not badly done. It's like he's deliberately that asshole and he does it well.
I know.
And when he gets his comeuppance, it's nice to see. So that's just
there's
what it comes
movies and series more recent that have characters like that. I get it. Yes, I know. I guess he did a good job, but I'm like, I don't care.
But that is one thing. It's like the overall cast. It's like half decent. Half is like whatever. Like I think the one girl in that. I think she's supposed. if I recall, she's supposed to be from like Destiny's Child, if I'm not mistaken.
Kelly Rowland.
Yeah.
I
She's
knew.
mhm.
I'm like,
And she's
pretty
actually
sure
not that
that's
bad though.
her.
She's actually not bad in the
Yeah,
film at all.
no.
She's
She was
actually good
kind of
in that.
mean too, but it's like,
I mean, she's a little bit of a bitch,
eh.
but with that, like the one nerdy kid, I forget his name. Like he's in
Oh,
Fanboys
I
and
know.
stuff as well.
Hmm.
Like he's good in that particular part. But I mean, he tells her off and everything. Like he gets his
That was
moment,
pretty
like
good.
pretty early on, like about midway through the point, and and after that, everyone's just kind of cool and just dealing with the situation or whatever. And then you do have the one guy, Freeberg, which a lot of people would say be like, this is just Jay from Jane Silent Bob, which he kind of is. But I mean, hey, I mean, it could have been Jason Mewes as like a meta type of deal, but I mean, he is still fun for what he is, especially that one line like, "Dude, that goalie was pissed about something," and I remember that even like that in the theater got a huge laugh at the time, and it is a really good line, but yeah, some of the other like how you feel about the main girl in the film? Do you think she's actually decent at all? Because some people I think usually say that she's not that great, but I mean.
Well, I wasn't like clamoring to be her best friend, but it was good enough.
Yeah. I actually managed 2012 pictures right up there. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, she's all right in the film, and of course her boyfriend, the one who's been institutionalized, is Jason Ritter, which is John Ritter's son, who was in Bride of Chucky. Um,
Okay, that's why I'm like,
yeah,
I know that face.
yeah, and some also would say that his performance is also a bit like so, whatever. But again, he's serviceable. But
Wasn't that great of a movie in general, so it stands to reason that it was so. I don't know.
Yeah, but the one friend of his as well, he himself is particularly pretty good in this film, and so it is set up to where like her boyfriend and his friend had been institutionalized, and how how it goes is that obviously that they have kind of contained Freddy's fear, like institutionalizing these kids and suppressed them with the hypnocil, which is actually a reference to Dream Warriors because that was the drug they were using in that
That's what
film.
I thought. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and so that's a
No.
nice like little tie-in and everything, and shows be like, okay, since a lot of the previous events from other films, like this is where they're kind of at now, where they've suppressed Freddy and all that stuff. So that's an interesting little plot point. And for what that is, I think it works well enough. And so, yeah, so the general like the opening kill is actually perhaps honestly like the peak of the film as far as the actual kills, because what the kill that Jason gets with the dickhead on the bed, it just stabs the shit out of him and then folds him up like a damn hot dog, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely insanely
I'm
brilliant
like,
how they
okay, I'll
execute.
stab, and then just, well, okay.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that because like the general action in the film is pretty good. You do get decent kills, but I feel like if you were to break down an actual kill, like it pretty much peaks right there as far as that. It's insanely perfection the way that that's done. So yeah, I just find it funny because of course you have to kind of do what you can to move the plot along. So it's like, okay, so Jason traveled his way over the Elm Street and stuff, and but it's kind of amusing too, just seeing like that big motherfucker would not have not made a single peep stalking throughout that house. Like every step he would have took
Thump,
up those
thump,
steps, it
thump.
would have been like a fucking earthquake outside. It would have been like, it's like what the fuck, and you hear all that shit upstairs. You're like, someone's in that house and doing stuff. It's like how you miss that guy, but that's just the kind of like the fun of it though in general. It's like especially this Jay-Z, he ain't light on his feet. It's like there's no way. But and so another thing too was that you realize that Freddy pretty much only gets like one kill in this film, is what people would point out, and that Jason's the one that kind of gets the most of it. But if you look at the plot and how everything unfolds, could they have given them a little bit more? It's like perhaps so, but I wouldn't say it's really the end of the world, because as the movie's going along, I would say you don't really notice it that much. So as far as when it comes down to like the versus sequences, like the first one, of course, is in Freddy's realm, the dream realm. How do you feel about that sequence and how it played out?
Well, I mean, I guess they took the comical approach, obviously, because it's
A
par
little
for the
bit, yeah.
course. they've done that sort of thing before, the ping ponging around and
Yeah, the
whatnot,
little,
and then the whole water bit. I suppose that
Now, how
was
you feel about that? Did that work for you? Because again, that's another thing that some would say that, well, I mean, Jason, yeah, he drowned in water, but he doesn't have like an actual fear of water. So why would that have stopped him from going after Freddy just
yeah.
because
That
it?
I was like trying to figure that one out.
I
I
mean, I
mean,
know
based
they
on
have
the
to try
other
to do
movies, I'm like,
something to try to, just create like a crutch for him, if you will. I mean, I understand that, but I always kind of looked at it maybe, if you want to kind of twist it just enough and realize that maybe just him being in the dream realm, it just struck his deeper psyche or something like that, and it
I
just kind of,
guess, yeah.
I mean, I guess you can play it off that way if you wanted to, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, but it serves for what they were trying to do. I was like, I kind of get it, but
Yeah, I get
it's
it, but
whatever.
it's
But
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I mean, because the way they handle again the flashback sequences going to the Crystal Lake and stuff like that, and
That
him
was
trying to
pretty
kill
interesting.
Jason, again, things that make sense because you can nitpick certain things, but at the same time, they still did a lot to honor what we actually know as far as their lore and history. It doesn't. It's not like a lot of these things now where they're just doing everything they can to defy,
It's
what's come
just in
before
name
it.
only,
It's
yeah.
just it. I mean, for the most part, they do like it makes sense within, like I said, what their established lore. Strengths, weaknesses, what got them here. How it all
Mm-hmm.
works. And it's like I said, it's the most probably like basic, simple plot, but because you really didn't need much more than this necessarily. Like I said, maybe some of the overall
Mm-hmm.
execution, like characters and writing and bits here and there. But for the most part, again, it's the most sensible way to go about the plot. For the most part. So when you get to towards the end sequence, now this is where it's just because even like Robert England himself, like on the commentary stuff, is referred to as like it's almost like Looney Tunes at the end of this. It's just wild. It's just bodies flying everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
the way that they pull Freddy in, you have that little moment. The music kicks in. He's like looking at Jason, the little showdown moment. That's all very well done, and it's just like you can't really ask for more. It's like you're getting what you paid for when it came to that sequence, and even though like you may have some questions like because like yeah, Freddy's magical, but of course once he's pulled into the real world, he obviously becomes human. Now they kind of hint he could have a little bit of his power, because if you notice like how he tilted his head and how that whole thing was like swinging, so it seemed like he could kind of manipulate a little bit, and it still seems like that maybe in a sense he takes a little bit more punishment than what he would probably be able to take. But for the sake of a fight, for the sake of argument, for the sake of what's going on here, again, it makes for a really great action sequence, and it doesn't really stop. It's just like I said, the way that they're just going at one another. It's like watching Rocky go up against Drago or something. It's just
Yeah,
the way it
the
plays
put
out.
Jason putting him through the wall and then just dragging him along. I thought that
Exactly.
part was
Exactly. It just
pretty
it
funny
had a
though.
flow
So
to it. Like I said, the way they just go at each other, like so you had to swinging and shit, that the stabbing and they're just fucking fisticuffs, like and just going insane
well,
on one another.
yeah,
And
it's
it
like
you can't really
two
complain too much.
superheroes in a
Exactly, yeah.
way
And
going
honestly,
at it.
even like years later, I still feel like it was a better fight sequence than overall than what we got in Batman v Superman. If you really ask me, honestly, because again, you just get what you paid for on it. And when you get down to like the dock sequence, like once they get to that point, and then once it's just like it's the dread moment where both of them seem like about to go down. Jason gets stabbed in the eyes, and a lot of that plays out very well. And I really do like how like I said, just the flow of that, and even eventually, like once Freddy gets his arm ripped off, and you have like that wide shot of him, and he's holding up the machete, like so you could just freeze frame that, and just been like, that's a great shot right there. And again, just like little what they did with the little beats, and how eventually, yeah, Jason comes up out the water, stabs him with his own glove out there, and you see the claws just sticking out. He drops to his knees, and the whole "Welcome to my world, bitch," which is a great moment, and just the
Yeah,
music. The music
that
is
was
also really
good.
good and really just adds to it. Being like, yeah, you're about to get yours, motherfucker, and just chops his head off. Just like the way that whole thing played out, I still think is really, really good, and I don't think it gets enough credit as far as how it goes with all of that stuff.
Yeah, that was. I can't fault it. It was the delivery and just visually, it looked really good.
Yeah, like all that stuff is just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun. Although the one thing I mean, I know some people, and even like literally at the beginning of the film where he regenerates Jason and stuff. Even though he gets stabbed in the eyes just moments before, like when he's actually in the water, she looks down at him. You can actually see his eye open, and it's just like, didn't you just get stabbed in your eye? Like, did it go back that fast?
I didn't
That is one little
think
thing, but
about that exactly,
that is just
but
one little
now that you
thing. But
say
it's
it,
just like, okay, well, whatever.
mm-hmm.
I mean, but I would say they end, of course, because you can't really say that one necessarily got the true victory over the other. I mean, it does end in pretty much as perfect as you could as far as an equal victory. Jason gets out of the water. He's still kicking, but at the same time, Freddy can always, you can always find a way for a guy with his abilities to come back, and he just winks at the camera. It's like, movie's done, but he's holding his head, and he just, again, just I feel like the execution, you really couldn't ask for much more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so you could have done like the whole big elaborate thing where you had the hand from hell, pull him down, and you have Pinhead, and so you could have done a lot more crazy, elaborate stuff. And like I said, for all it's worth, you could touch up script stuff here and there. You could probably punch up some of the characters, but all in all, as far as what you were expecting and how long it took to get there, between the different studios and whether or not who's playing Jason or whatever, what you get at the end of the day is actually something I feel like you can easily appreciate, because for the time, especially being the early 2000s, and now we get multiverses and all these other crossovers and stuff, it really is quite a milestone just to have gotten this. And so I can't really knock it, because it could have been a Freddy's Dead, it could have been Jason Takes Manhattan, but it really wasn't. It's still a fun movie for what it is. And so I
No, whenever you bring up Jason Takes Manhattan, or whenever someone brings it up, or I see it online, I'm like, Jason takes a boat to Manhattan.
hmm yeah, precisely.
So,
And
man.
as I've always said, I've been like, because I've been far enough removed, and it's like I get it. It's like, okay, fine, you kind of wimp out on some of the Manhattan stuff, but at least make a fun movie. But it was still arguably the most boring of the series, which is a damn shame. That just makes it that much worse. You're like, so I didn't get Manhattan, but at the same time, it's boring as shit. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But this film, I mean, yeah, it's by the end of it, it's balls to the wall, and it's just a good time. So, it works for me.
Mhm.
Yep. So I'd rank it a good solid. Nowadays probably 3.5. I think is fair enough for this one. So,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
yeah, yeah, and maybe I don't know, because I always think like especially all the alternative ideas. I've been like, okay, well, what if you flipped it? Maybe say, what if some kids from Elm Street, like it's kind of like that first film where Tina, you start off with her, she's having these dreams, and her friends are trying to hang out with her, comfort her. Like, what if you took like that idea, like someone's starting to have some dreams, but like Freddy is trying to maybe force himself back but can't quite get there, and then maybe they've been like, oh hey, let's take a trip out to the lake, and you could have gone to Crystal Lake, and then maybe a bunch of them hanging out, and then Jason's there, and then maybe some certain killings start happening, like one or the other starts killing, and like, what the fuck's going on? And then they run into each other. I've been like, that actually could have been another alternate way of doing it, like the flip side of it. I always thought that was an idea that
Yeah,
that
that
works,
I suppose that could have worked.
because it
Like, okay, something weird's going on. Let's get away from things for a while. Let's go on a little trip. Go boating, swimming, fishing, blah 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 at the lake.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because they've never really play. I mean, because I mean, Freddy. I mean, we know that Jason is pretty much confined to Crystal Lake. Like
Mhm.
Michael's confined to Haddonfield for the most part. Freddy, of course, we haven't really played around with that so much, as far as, well, he's kind of confined to Elm Street, at least whoever's living there. But once he's kind of starting, like, getting to someone's like psyche and stuff, when he starts messing with them, if they were to go over a little bit this way, who's to say he won't carry over as far as like continuing to stalk them, because he's already,
Yeah,
in
it's
there.
not quite like a Bluetooth thing. Your earbuds in your phone. If you leave your phone in the bedroom and you go outside to the street, it's like, hey, you go just far enough, and then you lose it.
Yeah,
I would think it would work.
yeah, exactly. So so that's an idea that I had been like, okay, well, it actually would have been an interesting like alternate version. Who knows? Maybe one day. I mean, if I mean, because it seemed like we're getting a little bit closer, just a little bit, towards new Friday 13th and maybe Elm Street at some point. Maybe
Poor
we could do,
Jason.
maybe
Poor
we,
Jason needs a movie.
yeah, I mean, they're supposedly something may be coming soon enough, so we'll see. But I mean, as far as like a new Freddy versus Jason, I would mind probably seeing that if they get to it at some point. So
In the nursing home or
in
something?
the nursing, I don't know, that'd be
No
weird.
knock against the two of them, but dang.
Mm.
I know Kane Hodder's a tough dude, but there's only so much you can really do.
I don't know. I mean, if he wants to do a full length, I think he's probably still
Go
has more.
for it, man.
If he could
I'll
get
watch
it within
it.
the next just like 3 to 5 years, I'm sure he'll be just fine doing it. I mean, I know he's just doing the most cuts for some of these games and stuff, but yeah,
Which is really
you
cool.
give him a chance. I mean, yeah, I mean, even if he had to have like one or two to maybe take maybe certain bumps here and there, like he's like, oh, maybe I'm just a little too old for that. I mean, I wouldn't doubt though he'd go full form,
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
because I know he's down to play anytime, anywhere. And I know everyone wants Robert England back too. At the same time, I'm like, the more we say, I'm like, dude, he's still that much more past his prime. He can't. I know he can't do that anymore. But anyway, whatever. So yeah, that'll do it for this review of that. Yeah, just thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.